Hi, and welcome to the Unhinged History Podcast, the podcast where two crazy individuals are going to compulsively read history stories and then join forces and tell each other the stories we only recently learned. I'm host number one. I'm Theresa.
I'm number two, and I'm Angie.
Welcome. We've made it. You've made it.
We're here.
Ha ha.
You're there.
I know. This sounds like a really
Huzzah.
badly written Dr. Seuss book.
You don't know, it could end up a really great written Dr. Seuss book, okay?
All right.
I'm
Here I was
already off
thinking
the
like
rhyme, so
this is this is your Walmart brand Dr. Seuss.
bought it off Temu
Mm,
or Wish. Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, I have a story. If you want to hear it, I get to go first, yeah?
Heck yes, let's do it.
Okay. Um, so I'm trying to decide how I want to go about this. I'm just gonna ask you a question. Do you remember the other day when you sent me this amazing TikTok about African fashion?
Yes.
Okay, just think on that. My sources are stillwerise.uk, yaasantewaa.co.uk, and I find this hilarious that it's all UK except for the blackpast.org, an article contributed by Raquel West in February 2019, and then a Forbes article from actually just January of this year. So, allow me to tell you the story of Yaa Asantewaa, the Asante queen who defied the English crown. Have you heard of her?
I love all of this for me. And if I've heard of her, it has not been in any depth or nothing I retained.
Sweet. I'm so excited. So, this started the other day. I had sort of a couple things like, rolling around in my brain about what I wanted to do. And then I looked at the man and said, I can't do any of the three things that I'm thinking about because I don't have the bandwidth to figure out how to pronounce one of these characters' father's names. Like, just can't do it. Those kind of weeks, like, you really should, but not this week, maybe next week kind of thing. And he's like, I got you, fam, don't worry. So he sent me her, and I was like, do you remember the part where I said, I don't have the bandwidth to figure out how to pronounce this girl's father's name?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. You could figure it out. So here we are. Thankfully, the Asante people have they're they're pretty phonetic in their spelling versus pronunciation, so I scored on that one. So she did many things in her life. She was called by many titles, from farmer to queen mother to paramount chief of the Edoweso, freedom fighter and humanitarian. So she's another person who is doing the absolute most. Um, as I think a lot of our characters are really when you think about it. So, as I said before, she's an Asante queen. The Asante is a confederacy which is made up of several different groups. They each have their own royalties and their own chiefs. Today, they're in present-day Ghana. Um, at the time of her reign, it would have been more likely known as the Gold Coast region of Africa, and you can kind of guess why, right? Like
Yeah.
that's where all the gold's coming from. Disclaimer though, we do of course have some moments of once again being pissed at the British Empire because they do a few things
Colonialism.
really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Okay, so Yaa Asantewaa was born, or generally believed to have been born, on or around October 17th of 1840. She's born into a Bise Asana clan. I found little on her childhood, which I guess is to be expected. But we do know that she had no real or formal education as we know it. Like, there were no schools. She was obviously taught things because we do know that she grows up to be a fabulous farmer. Like, her homesteading skills are unparalleled. Like, that was one of her first, like, recognition moments in life was how great at that job she was. She was also one of the many wives of the grandson of the seventh king of Ashanti. So she is already in a powerful position as it is because they are a matrilineal line. Like,
Oh, I love all of this.
right? Um, Around 1880, her elder brother, Nana Akwazi Afrain Okpaz, who was the powerful ruler at the time, appointed her the Queen Mother. So the Queen Mother is elected to, and I'm not entirely sure I understand this or that I'm wording it right, but I was under the impression when I was first reading about her that the Queen Mother in their society was elected by another, like by the former Queen Mother or by the former queen, like the current sitting queen. I'm a little unclear if I'm right about that, but at the end of the day, it's her brother that elects her to the position. So I don't know if his wife had passed or what the case may be, but you can imagine that this role, of course, is going to have many responsibilities, both in the social realm and in the political. One of which is called the gatekeeper of the Skaya Dwa, or the Golden Stool,
Mm.
which for them is a powerful symbol since at least the 1600s. Basically, from what I understand, whoever is sitting on this golden stool is where the power falls. So, as Queen Mother, Yaa Asantewaa, being in an influential matriarchal or matriarch in her kingdom, she then has a say in deciding eligible candidates who will sit the stool when it becomes vacant. So, I think for us in the European Western like mindset,
Yeah,
this is the closest you're going to get to a throne. But for them, it's like a spiritual,
like appointment almost.
well, you're appointed to the position, but it's like it's not just that you have this amazing chair. Like this chair, here, let me just explain it like this. Historians say that, quote, Okamof Akio Akie, who was the high priest and co-founder of the Ashanti Confederacy, had invoked the golden stool from the skies. The stool, which is of course made of gold, is believed to have landed at the feet of Osai Tutu. Um, he would go on to become the first Ashantahene, which is an Ashanti king,
Yeah.
and it is a widely held belief that the soul of the Ashanti kingdom is contained within this stool. So for them, it's not just a throne. It's like the heart of their people. Like that's my going from like our Western European understanding to their African understanding. It's more spiritual than it is physical, which I think is actually really cool. So like I said, it's her job to determine who's going to sit there next. So the other cool thing about it is it's not just a hierarchy of like father to son. Oldest son gets the stool, oldest son gets the throne, that sort of
Mm.
thing. Like it's whoever the queen mother determines is worthy of that position. So it might not be the king's son. It might be the king's grandson or the king's third brother, which I think is really interesting. So enter the British because, imperialism and all that. They're always looking for spices and mineral wealth, and this story is no different from that. So basically, the relationship between the Ashanti and the British was always, at the very least, tense. Like, different sources say different things, but my gathering of them, the basic gist is there may have been some short-term peace, but it was always sort of on the cusp of a problem from the very beginning of British even scouting the area out. So they had been in the area since the early 19th part of the century, the British. And in the earlier days, it could have been more friendly, but then the Ashanti hear that the British had aligned with the Fantis, and they're a rival group of the Ashanti. And the British are providing them with firearms. And let's just say about this point, the friendliness runs pretty cold. Um, then in 1823, Sir Charles McCarthy allied with the Fentes to support another tribe against the Ashantis in Cape Coast. And this was seen as the last straw. By 1874, there had already been three Anglo-Ashanti wars,
Wow.
three of them. So at some point before 1900, probably about 1896, the British and their other African allies used their superior military and, of course, their firepower to gain control of a number of the territories within the Ashanti Kingdom. So remember how I said earlier they're a confederacy of smaller groups?
Yeah.
Um, right. Okay. So by this point, the Ashanti are pretty much overpowered. And the British do what the British do, and they then depose the Ashantahene Prempeh the First, and they force him into exile in the Seychelles Island, along with Yaa Asantewea's grandson, who would have been the next in line, like he was the heir
Okay.
to the throne. He's also exiled. There are a few other members of the royal family and like noble chieftains, if you will, like that are also sent away into exile at this point. And I get that the bulk of the Ashanti people are kind of waiting it out. They want to get their ruler back. They want to get their head chief back. They want to bring their families home and reunite everybody, but at the same time, they're sort of wondering if maybe working with the British agenda will help that transition, like make it happen faster,
Right.
right? But at the end of the day, this is all part of the agenda for Britain to weaken the leadership of the kingdom and get a power hold in the region. They are obviously underestimating Yaa Asantewaa. Like they assume that a woman in this position is not something to really be worried about because at this point they don't look at her as somebody to be exiled.
I like
Only
this
the men,
foreshadowing.
right? But then British being British make the worst mistake possible and proceed to demand that the Ashantis hand over their golden stool. So, this is how it goes. It's 1900. The British Governor General of the Gold Coast, Sir Frederick Mitchell Hodgson, holds a meeting with the chiefs of the Ashanti Empire in Kusumi and basically tells them, or as one of my sources says, instructs them to give up the golden stool. Many sources say at this point he sits upon it. Now, it's not clear, okay, like I said before, it's not that it's in the form of a throne, but that there's just such high belief in its power and that it's heaven sent and that it's the source of the pride of the Ashanti people. But the other problem is they're not sure if Hodgins just made a mistake. Like if he was just looking for a place to sit down and that's what he chose to sit on. But regardless, I kind of think he knew what it was if he's there demanding it. Like I'm pretty
And it's
sure
gold.
sitting on it,
The
yeah,
only gold seat in the room.
pretty sure you're gonna know that's special. Like that's just my take on it, but whatever. Give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he knew exactly what he was doing. Regardless, this of course results in feelings of agitation and deep-seated disrespect. So, the Ashantis only do what makes sense to them and leave the meeting. They go home and prepare for war because the Golden Stool is not leaving the Ashanti Kingdom. Like, that's their absolutely not. Like, that's the
Right. That's
hard line they draw.
non-negotiable.
Right. So, it's said that Yaa Asantewaa is the main driving force behind the people at this point. The story goes that they're in this quote unquote secret meeting. And the Queen Mother grabs a gun from one of the warlords present at the meeting and fires it into the air. This is meant to show that the chiefs and the other male to the chiefs and the other male warriors that she's not going to sit idly by while the British try to impose their rule on her people. At this secret meeting, she is said to have given a speech to inspire the leaders of her community, stating that she and the women of the Asantewaa, i.e., her people,
Yeah.
are prepared to go to war even if the men weren't.
Oh.
So I give you parts of her speech. Quote, now I see that some of you fear to go forward to fight for our king. If it were in the brave days of Osi Tutu, Okamof Akie, and Okpuf where chiefs would not sit down to see their kings be taken away without firing a shot. No European could have dared speak to chiefs of Asante in the way the governor spoke to you this morning. It is true that is it true that the bravery of Ashanti is no more? I cannot believe it. It cannot be. I must say this. If you, the men of Ashanti, will not go forward, then we will. We, the women, will. I shall call upon my fellow women. We will fight the white man. We will fight till the last of us falls in the battlefield.
Wow.
Right? She also could have said, how can a proud and brave people like the Ashanti sit back and look while white men took away their kings and chiefs and humiliated them with a demand for the golden stool? The golden stool only means money to the white man. They have searched and dug everywhere for it. I shall not pay one Pradwin to the governor. I'm assuming that's their source of currency,
Yeah, that's sounds like it.
right? If you, the chiefs of Ashanti, are going to behave like cowards and not fight, you should exchange your loincloths for my undergarments.
First off, she used my favorite insult. Cowards.
Right? Made my day. Um, I personally like the idea that she said both of those things. I think they're very fitting. Another famous quote to come from her about this time frame says, "It is more honorable to perish in defense of one's motherland to remain in than to remain in perpetual slavery." So, with that being said, it must be said that there were some fears, like I mentioned earlier. Some of the leaders thought that if they just continue to do what the British want, that their life will regain some of its normalcy and the exiled leaders would be able to return. So
Oh
she's kind of
no.
working against that, right?
Yeah, that's no, it didn't. No.
It never works that way. So while the other leaders are debating on what to do and how to best respond to the British threat, Asantewaa holds her grounds and continues to rally the troops. One source says, quote, her leadership and passion led to her role as commander-in-chief of the Ashanti army. In turn, the Anglo-Ashanti's War's fifth and final war against the British became known as the Yaa Asantewaa War of Independence, or the War of the Golden Stool, which officially began on March 28th, 1900.
Okay, first off, the War of the Golden Stool, solid name.
I know, I'm here for it, but I also love that it is also known as the Yaa Asante War of Independence. Like, she got her name in there,
Dude.
right? Like, I couldn't decide which one I liked better, so I love that it's known as both. Like, you can Google either of those things and get really
Yeah,
good information,
because
right?
it's not the Washington independence of the United States.
Right. Yeah, no, it's not. So, Yaa Asantewaa leads the rebellion, which sources say result in the death of at least 1,000 British soldiers and other African soldiers that are allied to their cause, and about 2,000 Ashanti. Evidently, both of these totals were higher than the deaths from any previous wars between the two. I'm not entirely sure that number is right, only because they have now been at this for almost 100 years. So that feels low to me.
Yeah.
But that's what the sources say. So I'm just saying that feels low. Like 80 plus years of battling, I'm thinking there's got to be more, like logistically, right? She is known to have showed brilliant war strategy, the use of camo, and the use of drums as psychological warfare. So, get it,
Oh,
girlfriend. At one point, she instigates a blockade of the Kumasi fort, causing the British governor and his officers to flee. So, you got that going for you. The rebellion represents the final war in the Anglo-Asante series of wars, like I'd mentioned. On January 2nd, the of 1902, the British are finally able to accomplish their goal, and the empire is now made a protectorate of the British crown. But hold that in your noodle noggin because remember how I said she caused that blockade and the British governor and his officers had to flee? Her spirit would not be broken. She fought and retreated and rallied the troops again and again and again with her shrinking band of warriors. The British governor had to regroup with reinforcements, and it took him more than a year to capture her.
Oh,
Yeah. So he captured her and 15 of her closest advisors and then proceeded to send her to the Seychelles where everybody else was exiled.
right.
She would remain there until she died on October 17, 1921. Now, just 3 years after her death on December 27, 1924, Prempeh I and the other remaining members of the exiled Ashanti court were allowed to return. He made sure that the remains of Yaa Asantewaa and the other exiles who had passed away in exiles were brought back and given royal burial. So I do appreciate that for him. Um, she was the spark that led to the Asante Protectorate gaining independence as part of Ghana, the first African nation to achieve that. Do you know what year that was?
No, I have no idea.
1957.
Holy cow.
Yep. It would take that long, but it was she is credited with being the igniter of their freedom all those years before,
Wow.
right? In August of 2000, to commemorate her influence, a museum was opened in her honor in the Elju-Jabin district of Ghana. And similarly, there is an achievement award titled the Nana Yaa Asantewaa Awards, which honors women who uphold the values and leadership of the Santawane. Right? I love that so much. And now, because British gonna British, just this year, in recent news, as of January, let me hit you with something unsettling. The British Museum and London's Victoria and Albert, the V&A in London, announced that 32 gold and silver objects from Ghana, which were looted during the Anglo-Ashanti Wars in the 1800s, would return to the country for 150 years. For the first time in 150
Oh, okay.
years.
About to say, like, what? They're going to take it back after
Yes,
100. Okay. No,
they are.
Ghana
It's
is not, it's on loan, and the British are going to receive it again.
no, it's
Okay,
on
great.
loan. No, it's not great. I've
Wait,
said it. So these items will return to the country for the first time in 150 years, but only on loan of 3 years,
bullshit.
right? So there are dozens of gold items that were looted while the British Army raided the Ashanti Royal Palace that were auctioned off to the museums in April of 1874. But the items will be displayed as part of the Silver Jubilee of Ashantihini Omofu Ositutu II. He's the ceremonial king of the Ashanti people. The exhibition will not permanently remain in Ghana. They are only on loan for 3 years and they will return to the UK in 2027.
I don't like this.
Yeah, well, this is why. There are British laws in place, and I think you went over this in one of your stories, that prevent the museums from outright returning these artifacts to Ghana.
You know, I block things out that are just that that will cause me to create. I mean, it's not a war crime if you do it the first time, right? But
I don't think
I'm
so.
I'm about to get super creative when I revisit this line of logic.
Right? So I had to look it up because I was really curious about this, and Forbes magazine gave like a really great, like layman's terms of the legalities of it. But the basic gist is the British Museum Act of 1963 bans the museum from removing an artifact from its collection unless it is A, duplicate, B, damaged, or C, deemed unfit for the collection.
How about we just change that law?
That's what I said. The National Heritage Act of 1983 presents the Victoria and Albert Museum from legally returning artifacts as well. Now, the museum has told Forbes and noted that they had not received any formal request for reparation for the pieces being lent, which I have a hard time
This
believing
is
that,
this is the
but yeah.
equivalent of Ishi's bones and brain being separated and the Smithsonian being like,
Huh?
we didn't know about, nobody told us. We knew where it was the whole time. Meanwhile, the
Yeah,
head of the Smithsonian was like, I absolutely don't know. It's a myth. It's folklore.
right? So, my last little bit is that the British Museum did not say that there were any plans to permanently return the artifacts and the works, but they did praise the loan agreement as saying, quote, a way of working together with countries and community within the realms of the law. At which point I say, then change the law.
Yeah.
Like, it's so frustrating to me. But I do have a picture of her
Yeah, I'm
statue
here for that. Please and thank you.
to end on a funner note than British reparation laws. I'm
Okay,
unclear
so
if you can see her. There you
she
go.
is showing me a statue of a person,
This is Yaa
ambiguous gender.
Asantewaa, so
Oh, okay.
no,
Okay,
it's
so
her.
it's female. Okay, because I
Hmm.
thought I saw memories underneath. Okay, so it is a statue of a woman wearing a helmet. She has a different, like it's armor, but it's very different from European, armor.
Hmm.
It looks like, imagine you're wearing a very flowy, loose-fitting tunic, and on that tunic there are um
It
armor
like
plates,
yeah,
but
that's what I'm gonna
decorative
guess.
armor plates, and then she also is holding a gun.
And she has at least three blades on her within these armor plates.
Yes. And the
So
hands, those are very realistic looking hands.
I know they did a really, really great job on this. That's kind of my favorite part. So that's the story of Yaa Asantewaa.
I love it. Um, I am going to start my story by showing you a photo.
I love this for me. Okay. Um, so I am looking at a black and white image, and it's actually very haunting.
Hmm.
This woman is, I'm just going to assume that she is indigenous, but her markings on her forehead have a very Nordic leaning to them. She's got a lot of gorgeous jewelry on, big hoop earrings, a beautiful bandana, and I can't even begin to describe the tunic slash dress she's wearing, but she is looking directly at the camera,
Hmm.
menacingly.
Yes.
She's giving Olga of Kiev.
And I'm so grateful you said that. So now that you have that photo in your head, that is the photo I saw that started me on this fun goose chase. I am going to tell you the story of Hajjah Ghazala bint Ammar, who is an Amazigh Chaoui woman. And the Chaoui are an ethnic Berber tribe, and the Amazigh is a clan or subtribe of that, as I understand it. There's a lot that I don't necessarily understand, so bear with.
Okay.
Um, I'm crediting a listener to the podcast named Alessandro Abate on TikTok. He shared her story with me and sent me down this rabbit hole. And I'm going to own all of the plot holes that I've got, and I'm going to be very clear about what I know, what I don't know. Um, so my sources, time.com, Women Unveiled, Marc Garanger's contested photos or contested portraits of 1960 Algeria by Carol Negar. Um, EasyBlitz.com has a blog listening to the Femmes Algerines. Uh, then there is a New York Times Unwitting Subjects in the Algerian War by James Estrin. And then a bio on her on Behance.net. And then
Okay.
I have another source, the Binghamton University. They have a uh, article by Jennifer Abate photography, and the politics of representing Algerian women. Okay.
Okay.
Now, um, this woman, I want to tell you her story, but I don't have a lot of facts about her for many reasons, and I'm going to get into them all. The only way I could figure out a framework to tell her story is by telling it through the eyes of the French soldier who took this photo as a larger narrative.
I love
Um,
this.
it is, it was one thing like I rabbit holed so hard on this entire story. So I'm going to be boldly upfront about the unsubstantiated sources. Um, and it's going to be really incredibly easy to spot them. And I plan on this story being solid discussions on the role of story and the importance of narrative to our survival as humans.
Yes. Yes
Be-
and amen.
because I feel like that is what it's at the nugget of all of this. Okay. So France had the Algerian War, and it's during the Algerian War that the Algerian National Liberation Front, that'll be known moving forward as the FLN. I'm sure that makes sense in
Okay.
French. Um, and their fight for independence.
Okay.
Now, for France, the trauma of the Algerian War stretches from 1954 to 1962. It's akin to the Vietnam War for the United States, but unlike Vietnam, there's very few photographic documents that exist from that period in Algeria. And so the French kind of have this collective amnesia around the event.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I've
Pixar
we've been
didn't
recently
happen,
discussing this. Okay.
and we didn't take pics.
Yeah, Pixar didn't happen.
Now, here's where we have a man named Marc Garanger who enters stage left. Now, in 1960, Garanger is a 25-year-old draftee. He's already been photographer. He's already been a professional photographer for the last 10 years. He lands in,
That's why the picture is good, like as outstanding as it is. Like the woman is outstanding alone, but his
yeah,
ability to see her is
yes.
yeah, okay, got
And
it.
the more you learn about him and this and all of that, you're going to be like, yes, 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 and yes. Okay, so he lands in a small village of Ain Tazin or Terzin. He's about
Okay.
75 miles south of Algiers. Okay. Now, he, like many politically engaged young men, had put off his departure for the army as long as humanly possible, and he's hoping the war is going to end without him. Okay. As soon as he's selected as the regiment's photographer. So he's like, ah, great. So he goes on to
Dang it.
compile one of the very few photographic essays dedicated to the painful period of Algerian women.
Okay.
Now, that's not necessarily what the military wanted him to do, but that is what he did.
Love that.
So Charles Maurice Charles, the head of the French army, he attacks the mountain villages occupied by 2 million people, some of whom they joined the Algerian resistance, the FLN. And to deprive the rebels of contacts in the villages, he decides to destroy the villages and transfer the population into regroupment villages.
Oh yes, that sounds lovely.
It's a euphemism for concentration camps.
I was gonna say it's giving farewell to Manzanar.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Now, soon, Garanger's commanding officer decreed that the villagers must have ID cards.
Hmm.
So naturally, he asked the military photographer to make these cards. This seems pretty linear in
Like
the
a
thought
logical
process.
step.
Garanger recalls either I refused and went to prison or I accepted. I understood my luck. It was to become a witness, to make pictures of what I saw that mirrored my opposition to the war. I saw that I could use what I was forced to do and have the pictures tell the opposite of what the authorities wanted them to tell.
Yes. This is the way, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is the way that you, what is the word? There's a term where malicious compliance.
Yeah, I love it.
This is malicious compliance. Um, the women that Geringer portrayed come from neighboring villages. They're either Berber or Muslim. They'd never before interacted with Europeans. And so when Garanger arrives, there's a detachment of armed men with machine guns on their shoulders. They've got an interpreter and then the commander.
Well, that's not terrifying at all.
No, did I mention these women wear veils?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The picture you saw, was she wearing a veil?
No.
Okay, yeah, keep that in mind. So Garanger takes photos with the veils, and his commanding officer didn't think that was good enough because we're
Because you
talking
can't see their
slits for eye
face.
holes, right?
Right.
So the women would be lined up, and then each in turn would sit on stools outdoors in front of the whitewashed wall of the house. And then, without their veils, their disheveled hair and their protective tattoos were exposed.
Ugh.
And so they have these very harsh lines on their faces that reflect the harsh lines of their life, right? So their stiffness of their poses and the intensity of their gazes, they kind of reflect back to um, a word I didn't know, but you might because you like photography. Daguerreotypes. I think I said that
Daguerreotype.
wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It's one of the first forms of photography. Think Civil War portraits.
yeah.
Okay.
So Geringer says, I would come within 3 feet of them. They would be unveiled. And in the period of 10 days, I made 2,000 portraits, 200 a
Wow.
day. The women had
Good
no
grief.
choice in the matter. Their only way of protesting was through their look.
Well, let me tell you, she has some things to say.
Yes. He goes on to say, it's this immediate look that matters. When one discharges a condenser, a spark comes out. To me, photography involves seizing just that instant of discharge. In these sessions, I felt completely crazy emotions. It was an overwhelming experience with lighting in each image. I held up a mirror to the world, which reflected this lightning look that the women cast at me. And I was just like, holy crap, right? So, as a Westerner, I don't think we fully understand wearing a veil.
No, I don't think we do at all.
And I don't think you and I could. I think we could do our best to get to a place of understanding, but I think it would only be intellectual. I don't think we could get to a place where we get it.
No, I don't think I, yeah, no, I think I would, because of the whole Western mindset and being raised that I was being raised, I would stop thinking about it the minute I realized, you can't see my facial features anymore, and I'm happy about that.
Mm,
And I know like, that's not the case,
yeah,
right? But I was one of those weirdos that kind of loved that part of COVID where we had to wear masks all the time because my face tells you everything I'm thinking. So it was nice to just get away with out having to account for my facial features.
right.
So yeah, no, I don't think I especially don't have a clear understanding of the spiritual aspect, of the cultural aspect, none of it.
So in the Middle East, for them, it was like wearing, like their veil was a second skin.
Yeah,
And it's taken off only within the secrecy of your home. And it's only among like other women or between a husband and wife, but never publicly.
right.
And so these portraits are an absolute collision between Islamic and Western civilizations. And for
Okay.
Geringer, he thought this serves as a very apt metaphor of colonization.
He's not wrong.
Now, he says that these women's defiant look may be thought of as an evil eye that they cast to protect themselves and curse their enemies, which I am here for.
I mean, do what you got to do, sisters.
In the New York Times article, Geringer says, you have to understand that this is a military camp. Now, at the time he said it, he was 75. This was war, and they were forced to be photographed. There was no communication. This had to happen. I had to take the picture, and they had no choice in being photographed. And
I
so,
hate that.
he takes the first pictures with everybody veiled. He's told that they have to be photographed again without the veils. And now they're unused to showing their full face or their hair to anybody outside their family. And so they're standing before Garanger's camera like they're naked. He said some look lost, others seem to seethe. And Garanger remembers that while the Algerian men were doing the fighting, that these women were combatants in their own way.
Absolutely.
Now, at one point, he thinks about Edward S. Curtis's photographs of the American Indians. And so he marshals his skills that he had developed as a photographer before serving in Algeria. And he said, I was trying to give them back their humanity and their dignity through my portraits.
Oh, what a hero.
And his photographs later get featured in the Bodies in Question exhibit, which is curated by a dude named Fred Richchin um, at the New York Film or the New York Photo Festival. And it was Richin who sees obvious and uncomfortable parallels between the half-century old photographs and the current conflict in France over Muslim women appearing fully veiled in public.
Like current as in
Current, like recent.
current.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And Richin goes on to say that this is very important because the visual rape of women who are forced to appear uncovered, you feel a distress, a defiance, an anger, a vulnerability because they're not used to showing their face outside of their immediate family.
Yeah, I'm not okay with that. If that's, yeah, no.
I mean, and so like, boom, like there is just so much intense emotion here. Now, because there was so little information, went to ChatGPT and figured out that her name, Ghazala bint Ammar, is likely an Arabic name. And here's the naming convention. So you have Ghazala, which is the personal name of an individual. It means gazelle in Arabic, and it's to
Okay.
symbolize grace, beauty, elegance. Bint means daughter of. And so this is, just lineage. And then you have Ammar, and that's her father's name. So we have her name.
Okay.
So you kind of can hear back. We don't have a lot of her story. Why? Because her history wasn't written
Told.
down.
Of course not.
And if it was, maybe it's in Arabic, maybe it's in French, but it's not in English,
Right. And I mean really why would at this time why would her story have been written down?
pretty much.
Which is so frustrating
It's
to me.
heartbreaking to say out loud, but
Yeah.
the bio that I was able to find on the Behance website states that a woman from the Tazbent region of the state of Talbessa in the Elwes Mountain region, or the Elwes Mountain region, devised a new method to confront the organized rape attempts by the French army soldiers against the Algerian women. Now, first off, organized rape attempts. When I looked up the background to the Algerian War, the images I saw that I did not share, you're welcome. They're awful.
Okay.
Do not recommend it. To see two uniformed officers holding a woman, arms akimbo, who is completely naked after an assault.
I hate that.
Mhm. Yeah. Now, they have this kind of stuff happening at the regroupment villages.
Oh, shocking.
Surprise. Now, here's where things kick off, and here's where we learn more about our girl, Ghazala. It says, as soon as she heard the sounds of the soldiers' cars, she would call the women from 7 to 60 years old to gather in the yard of the house and smear their bodies with animal dung, charcoal residue, and traces of burnt wood. Another source says that she used to create a solution from onions to put on their skin, and this is all just to make themselves unappealing. They want to smell bad, they want to look bad.
Fair.
And then the women would line up and hold each other by the hand, forming a human mass so the soldiers couldn't pull any of them away.
Yes.
Now, from what I gathered, some of the women were suspected of supporting the FLN because They're fighting for liberation against the oppressors. Surprise.
Shocking. Didn't see
So
that coming.
one of the French soldiers or smashes Ghazala's rib cage, and she continued to vomit blood for the next 3 days until she died.
I hate that. I was hoping that we were gonna, like, there was gonna be some silver lining and we were gonna get to know she made it home and had a peaceful. Yeah, okay. I should have
Mhm.
known better.
It was me telling the story, you know? But going back to her photo, the French photographer who took the photo wrote in his diary, I have never been as afraid in my life as the moment I took the picture of this woman in the Eurasians.
He's not wrong because she looked like she was going to eat me alive, and I
Yeah,
didn't take the photo.
right. Yeah, she's going to climb through that photo.
Mm-hmm.
So 50
Oh,
years.
her freaking resilience. I'm so mad for her.
Mhm. Um, 50 years after Algeria's independence was proclaimed, Garanger's contested photos have not lost their strength because they still have a deep and profound impact on people like Angie and I looking at them for the first time. He goes back to Algeria in 2004 and he meets those that he's photographed.
Ugh.
And he found that the pictures he had taken were often the only ones that these women had ever had of themselves.
Oh, wow.
And they welcomed his return.
I had a feeling they would. He seems to have been the only one there that had any sort of,
Humanity within him.
yeah, manners.
Yeah. Um, he'd become the keeper of their memory.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
for me, when I think about this, if her story is a folk tale that's made in the 60s, then she was created to encode survival tools for other women
Mm-hmm.
so that they could overcome this immediate peril that they're in. Like, here's the tools you can use. Here's how you can protect yourselves because Ghazala bint Ammar gave us these tools.
Right.
And so, if that's the case, she might have only been an oral history or oral story that was shared. Now, if she is a recent creation, she still gives women and marginalized people a narrative framework that they can use to build the tools needed to survive. Because all around the world, we're seeing oppressive forces attack people's autonomy. And people are getting very comfortable with saying the quiet parts out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there is a definite importance in being able to tell her story. But now I want to share, I'm going to share my screen again. I'm going to share with you some of the other photos that I've got of her. Well, not necessarily of her, but so here we have some of the other photos. Oh, I need to actually click that share button. So here we
Yeah.
have some of the other
Otherwise,
photos
I'm
that
just
he
looking at
took.
me again.
Yep. Okay. So let me,
Oh, wow.
okay. So here's some of the other photos of the women from that regroupment village. But then,
Oh, so there's like a little bit of a silver lining here.
yeah.
Look at them. So I'm going to assume the four photos on top match the four
Yep.
below.
This is the same. So
Okay.
these are them taken in 20 or 1960, and then the same women in 2004.
Wow. I appreciate so much the difference in photos. And I'm assuming is he's the one that took them in 2004?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. You okay, so I'm sorry. I should be telling you what I'm looking at, but I'm kind of just so the top row are four colored images of four women. A couple of them have family members in the photos with them. They're all obviously older ladies now, but they're stunning. They're beautiful. They're smiling. You can see their face tattoos and their veils. Their faces are showing, but you can see their veils below their chins and around their ears and things.
Mhm.
And then the four below that are their photos from the 60s where their faces have been uncovered. And their hair is very much something that belongs in the private quarters. And they are very defiant in their photos, but you can actually see, especially on photo number 3, the terror in her face.
Yeah.
And the comparison to that is her 2004 photo is so sweet. She just looks like a happy grandma getting
Mhm.
getting to enjoy her grandchildren. And then the lower photo is a group of individuals. One of the women, I'm assuming that gentleman is the photographer.
No, that's family
No,
member.
that's a family member. Okay, I wasn't quite sure. She's holding her portrait from earlier.
Yeah.
Um, these women are proud. That's
Yeah.
the only words that can come to my mind right now. These women are proud, and I am equally proud for them and equally mad for them that that was even something they had to think about surviving, let alone having to carry on afterwards. But they've done it, and here they are being grandmas.
Yeah. But
Oh,
I loved all of this because it just seemed like a very important story and a story
yeah,
that is just bigger. And I don't know
yeah.
how else to say it. It's just bigger.
I have been thinking a lot. I love that you brought this story up because I've been thinking a lot lately about how just being someone that loves history in general, how it is our job to remember it. Um, but more so the history that's not told. Like the individual stories of the people that came before us and women's history. And I mean, more and more women's history is told now, but it's still so marginalized compared to the white man's writing. Like when you gave the Sacagawea story, like we got to hear her story, but we heard her story from his perspective.
Yeah.
So, um, wouldn't it have been nice to hear her story from her perspective? Like that would have been, I know, it's so important that we don't forget where we came from and we don't forget the people who walked there before us, I guess, is all I'm trying to say.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. And I think, yeah, we need to be mindful of the stories that we're taking in and the stories that we're telling.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be uplifting and we need to be intentional.
Mm-hmm. That's my husband's favorite word.
Intentional?
Yeah, he loves that word.
Mm.
Sometimes it makes me crazy, but most of the time he's right. Gosh dang it.
I mean, intent does have a lot to do with sentencing in the courtroom.
That isn't in the way that he uses it.
I mean, but it's not in the way that he's using it.
Yeah, I guess that's true when you say it like that. Yeah. Great. Now I have to tell him he's right again. Thanks, Teresa.
So if you want to tell Angie's husband that he's right again, or you're thinking, if I listen to Angie do it, then I don't have to do it to my own, then rate, review, subscribe, and follow us along on more adventures as we may or may not admit that our spouse may be onto something.
I'm not going to admit anything. He already knows.
That's, you know what? Yeah, I'm okay with this. And on that
Yeah.
note, goodbye.
Bye.